Chapter 1061. Artoria was right. Wu Ming really needed time right now. When he thought about how many things he had to deal with, Wu Ming would rather fight another 300 rounds with Jisha. But that was all talk. He couldn't run away from what he had to face. After sending Mayu to school, Wu Ming and Collis arrived at the root of everything. The golden portal closed, and Wu Ming and Collis, who had just exited the portal, were now standing on the platform of the root of everything. The original portal was purplish-black, but it was still too dark, so Wu Ming modified it in the root of everything. Not only did it change the color, but its ability was also greatly enhanced. Otherwise, Wu Ming wouldn't have been able to use the portal to directly travel from Mayo's world to the root of everything. At the center of the platform where Collis and Wu Ming stood, Wu Ming's backup machine had already disappeared. Without a doubt, the backup machine had gone to save the world. Wu Ming waved his hand, and several high-tech screens appeared in front of Wu Ming and Collis. This was the result of Wu Ming using the authority of the root of everything. Wu Ming could directly see the scenes of other worlds, be it the past or the present. What was displayed on the screens was the live broadcast and recording of the backup machine saving the world. On the screens, various worlds were on the verge of destruction. In the next second, a giant white dragon descended from the sky, instantly found the source of the destruction, and stopped it. The survivors of those worlds were all deeply grateful to the giant white dragon. Although there were very few of them, there were still some who held resentment and hatred towards the white dragon for saving the world. Without a doubt, those people were not the masterminds behind the destruction of the world, but they probably had something to do with it. After that, the white dragon automatically retrieved information about that world, understood the cause, and used the root of everything to destroy those who were truly responsible for the destruction of the world and refused to change their ways. Even if they had abilities like substitutes or resurrections, they were useless in front of the root of everything. Wu Ming's backup machine tirelessly went to each world that was about to be destroyed one after another to save them. Looks like the backup machine can also take on my mission. However, there were worlds that had been saved, and there were also worlds that had not been saved. Wu Ming waved his hand again, and the screens in front of him changed instantly. The next thing that appeared on the screen was no longer a white dragon. Not only that, but the worlds on the screen were also on the verge of collapsing. A few seconds later, they completely shattered. Be it people or objects, they were all annihilated. As for the world itself, it would turn into an invisible speck of dust that wandered between worlds, eventually being sucked into the origin and becoming a speck of origin black soil. That's not a good idea. Wu Ming frowned. It was clear that while the origin dragon could quickly save worlds, there were many worlds that could not wait for that world to arrive. After all, there was no telling how many times the origin had reincarnated, how big the world was, or how many worlds there were. Coupled with the fact that the world was being destroyed faster and faster, Wu Ming's backup machine alone would not be able to save them in time. In order for Wu Ming's plan to become God to proceed, he had to ensure that the world would not be destroyed again. Otherwise, they would be like a pool of water that was being filled with water at the same time. Wu Ming raised his hand and began to connect with the origin. An invisible thread connected to Wu Ming's body. Wu Ming wanted to temporarily stop the origin's abilities to create worlds, recycle dust, and produce origin power. Wu Ming wanted the origin to control the time of all worlds. Controlling a few dozen, or even a few hundred worlds could be done easily by borrowing the origin's power. However, if he wanted to control the time of all worlds that were about to be destroyed, the origin would need to stop everything else and fully focus on this aspect. By temporarily stopping or slowing down the flow of time of the worlds that were about to be destroyed, there would be enough time to save those worlds. However, there was no telling when Wu Ming's backup machine alone would be able to save all the worlds that were about to be destroyed. As for having Wu Ming save all the worlds that were about to be destroyed while their time was being controlled, that was even more impossible. After all, Wu Ming still had to accompany Mayu, and there were a lot of things that he needed to take care of, so how could he save so many worlds that were about to be destroyed at once? And so, Wu Ming made a decision. I need to find someone to help. As for who to find, it was naturally the people that Wu Ming was familiar with in the worlds that he had experienced. However, they all had their own lives, and not many of them would be able to fully devote themselves to saving a world. And so, Wu Ming made another decision. He wanted to create a system. That's right, a system that gave the host a mission. He did as he said. And so, Wu Ming used the power of the Prime Origin to create the system. Because it was a drop in the ocean compared to the time needed to control all the worlds, creating this system did not burden the Prime Origin much. Similarly, it did not take much time and was quickly completed. Wu Ming held a ball of light that was emitting a faint white light in one hand with a satisfied look on his face. By the way, because it was a system, it did not have a fixed shape or size, and what Wu Ming was holding was the concept of a system. Wu Ming had set up a mission cycle in the system, which would issue missions at fixed times, and the missions were naturally to save the world. According to the difficulty and degree of destruction of each world, the missions would be categorized into different types, and those who fit the criteria would be given the corresponding missions. Because this system was connected to the Prime Origin, the Prime Origin would personally select the worlds and issue missions, so there was no need to worry about any issues. Normally, when a mission was issued, the default option would be accept the mission, but there were also options to postpone the mission or reject the mission. After all, the real reason why Wu Ming had set up this system was to allow Wu Ming's acquaintances to save the world without affecting their own lives. Completing a mission would grant a required reward, and the reward could be selected by the host. For example, a reward that would increase one's personal strength, or a reward that would strengthen one's group. And these rewards would be directly replicated by the Prime Origin from each world where such rewards existed, so there was no need to worry about affecting other worlds. Moreover, because it was for acquaintances, there would be no failure penalty even if the reject the mission was chosen, and the rejected mission would not be delayed but transferred to someone else. However, if the postpone the mission option was chosen, the reward would definitely be reduced. Postpone the mission meant that the host would temporarily accept the mission and not do it immediately. And if the host did not accept the mission but did not do it immediately, the reward would naturally be reduced. Of course, if there was enough time, the host could also request the system to accept more missions. In any case, this was a rather good system from all aspects. Master, do you want to give it a name? Collis suggested. A name. After thinking for a second or two, Wu Ming gave an answer. Just call it system. Chapter 1062. Collis didn't say anything about this. After all, she already knew that her master was terrible at naming things. She was just looking forward to it. Now, let the Great Origin send this system to a designated existence. Then, with that existence as the unit, it can be spread to the surroundings. The system was a concept. Therefore, Wu Ming would split it into several parts and send it to a certain existence in the world that Wu Ming had experienced. Then, that existence would spread it to other people designated by Wu Ming. Wu Ming lightly tossed the system in his hand, and the ball of light instantly disappeared. The system had been sent by the Great Origin to a designated person in the world designated by Wu Ming. In Mayo's world, Artoria, Jean, and Maeve all received the system. Immediately, the three of them gathered together. My dear needs me. Of course, I'll help him. Maeve smiled sweetly. She didn't want to be treated like a vase by Wu Ming. Fortunately, Wu Ming didn't do that. He still chose to let her help. This isn't just helping Wu Ming. It's also saving other worlds. Artoria was King Arthur, after all. She had a strong sense of justice. I'll help as much as I can. Although Jean didn't have much confidence, when it came to saving other worlds, she would definitely not hesitate, just like Artoria. After all, this was indeed helping Wu Ming. Although Enkidu also received the system, her main task was to look after Tiamat. As for Mayu, Ilya, and the others, although they weren't weak, Wu Ming didn't give them the system. Elementary school students should just obediently go to school. Great Underground Tomb of Nazalik. In the office, the Guardian Supervisor Ye Abaid sat on the high-class sofa that belonged to Wu Ming's office. He had a serious expression as he went through documents. That is, if you ignore the fact that Ye Abaid's but was constantly moving against the sofa. If Demugos were here, he would definitely ask Ye Abaid what he was doing. Then, Yeobade would reply with an infatuated look on his face that he was trying to taint Wu Ming's aura. Right at this moment, Yeobade froze as if he had just received something. Knock knock, there was a knock on the door, and Demugos walked in. Seeing the stunned Yeobade, Demugos was puzzled. Demugos walked to the desk and put down the document in his hand. What's wrong, Yeobade? Yeobade, who had regained his senses after hearing Demugos' words, had a serious expression on his face. Sir Wu Ming sent a message. When it came to Wu Ming, Demugos became serious. Demugos, Lord Wu Ming is going to become a god in another world. I see, so that's why Lord Wu Ming left this world. Then, we will naturally get what Lord Wu Ming wants. Both Yeobade and Demugos had a joyful expression. As expected of the Supreme Honorable, even his goal was so great. The two began to imagine, according to the Supreme Honorable's decree, we need to implant the system that Lord Wu Ming passed to me into everyone in the great underground tomb of Nazalik to help Lord Wu Ming save the worlds that are about to be destroyed. After all, if those worlds are destroyed, Lord Wu Ming's goal will not be achieved. Hearing this, Demugos pushed up his glasses. Indeed, and we can even win people's hearts through rescue. As expected of Lord Wu Ming. Neither of them cared about why other worlds were involved. After all, they had come to another world in the great underground tomb of Nazalik. There was nothing wrong with Wu Ming going to another world. Then, Yeobade stretched out her hand, and a ball of light appeared in her hand. You can implant this system through contact. Lord Wu Ming has already put the specific method of use in the system. Arrange it as soon as possible. As she spoke, Yeobade touched Demugos with the ball of light. In the next second, Demugos had a thought, and the same ball of light appeared in his hand. So that's how it is. As expected of Lord Wu Ming, to be able to create such a powerful tool. Then, Demugos bowed slightly. Then, I'll take my leave. I'll get everyone in the great underground tomb of Nazalik to implant it as soon as possible. Demugos left the room, leaving Yeobade alone in the room with a look of excitement. Lord Wu Ming, I will definitely make you a god in another world. The same thing happened in another world. In the world of the god-slayers, Athena, Lancelot, and Guinevere, who were living on a small island in the Pacific Ocean, received the system at the same time. My lord. Lancelot, who was dressed like an older sister, looked very excited. It's Lord Villo. Guinevere, who looked like a young girl, was even more excited. Interesting. Athena, on the other hand, seemed to be very interested in this system. My lord needs us. Lancelot immediately dressed up, as if he was about to go save the world. Wait, uncle, don't be in such a hurry, Guinevere quickly said. Lancelot was confused. With just the three of us, I'm afraid we can't help much. This system has a spreading function, and there's also a list of people who can be trusted. Why don't we leave one person to spread the word? Athena instantly understood Guinevere's meaning. That's right, I think so too. This way, we can help Lord Villo more efficiently. If that's the case, let my beloved daughter stay. With my lord's deterrence, even without me, no one would dare to attack you, Lancelot suggested. That's right. Even if you become his subordinate god, you won't have much combat power. At most, you can protect yourself. If that's the case, you should stay. Then, Lancelot and Athena instantly disappeared. They accepted the system's mission and went to save the other worlds. Guinevere, who was left alone, was in a state of sorrow. Why did this happen? I wanted to see if I could see Lord Villo. In the game world, in the human kingdom of Elgia, the residence of the Queen. Rick, who had installed a mechanical arm on the broken arm, hurriedly ran in from outside. Rick had matured a lot, but he was not as haggard as before. Chloe, I have news of Lord Villo. Rick's sister, Chloe, who was not dressed very elegantly, walked out in surprise. Compared to the cheerful and lively Chloe before, Chloe was now more dignified. However, Chloe did not change when it came to her brother. The god who disguised himself as a human to help you. Didn't you say he went to the other worlds? After Wu Ming left, Rick did not hide it and told his sister about Wu Ming's identity, who was the current queen of the human kingdom. After Tito became the only god, Chloe, with the support of Rick and many other humans, established the human kingdom of Elgia and became the queen. Tito repaired the World Cup, so the living conditions of the humans were not bad. More and more humans from small tribes joined Elgia, and Elgia became more and more prosperous. Let's not talk so much. Take a look at this first. Rick instantly held Chloe's hand. Chloe was stunned as if she was electrocuted. This system is very suitable for the development of us humans. After understanding the system that had been transferred from Rick to Crony, Crony expressed her thoughts. I think so too, but I'm still considering whether to give this to other races. Although the world was at peace, the conflicts between the various races could not be resolved so easily. The races that needed to cooperate were willing to put aside their hatred, but the forest elves and goblins were still enemies, not to mention the other races. Let's do it secretly in our country first. Our only god is Tito, after all. If we spread the outer god's things, I'm afraid the only god will be unhappy. Chloe, who had been the queen for a while, immediately made a decision. Of course, the system has stated that we can spread it directly to the Jikai race. I'll leave this task to you, Rick. Remember to explain it to Zio properly. I know, I'll contact the Jikai race. Rick looked helpless. Then, Chloe showed a pained expression. As the ambassador, you're the only one who has good contact with the Jikai race. However, the Jikai race did have some problems with their brains recently, so you should be careful. Although Rick had given up the throne to his sister, he had become a diplomat of the kingdom. Rick had always been working hard for the country. Moreover, Rick's mechanical arm was obtained through diplomatic contact with the Jikai race. Due to Zio, the Jikai race was gradually awakening their individual emotions, but machines were still machines, and no one could guarantee when they would have problems. The Jikai race has already unilaterally submitted to the Villo, just like the Skywing race. I believe that if it's something from the Villo, they would definitely accept it. Rick looked confident. If that's the case, let's contact the Skywing race at the same time. A child's voice rang out in the hall where only Chloe and Rick were present. The only god. Tito. When did you get here? Both Chloe and Rick instantly knew who the owner of the voice was. It was the god of games, Tut. As for why Rick acted like he was familiar with Tito and even dared to be so impudent, it was because Tito would come looking for Rick to play that unfinished game of chess, and the game was still ongoing. Moreover, Tito was born from Rick's thoughts, and the two of them could be considered close friends, which was why Rick was so casual. I'm a Villo after all, so I'll allow him to interfere with this world as much as possible. Just do it. If Wu Ming hadn't given the Celestial Cup to Tito, Tito wouldn't have become the only god. In a sense, Wu Ming could be considered the father of this world's only god. After Tito's voice disappeared, Chloe and Rick looked at each other and nodded. They then split up and began to spread the system. Above the clouds of the kingdom of Elgia, Tito was holding a white ball of light with a smile on his face. The system only gave it to the humans. Looks like you want the Skywing and Jikai races to ally with the humans. As expected of you. In the next second, Tito, who had loaded the system, disappeared. Such a fun game, system, naturally had to be tried out by him, the only god. Chapter 1063. Let's go back, Matthew. Gudazi looked particularly worried. It's okay, senpai. My body was originally used for experiments. I'm already very satisfied to be able to live until now, meet senpai, and experience so much. Before Matthew finished speaking, he fell into a coma. Matthew. Gudazi didn't know where she got the strength from, but she directly carried Matthew and ran back to Chaldea. The next second after Gudazi and Matthew's figures disappeared, a golden ripple appeared, and Wu Ming walked out of the portal. Looking at the two people in the distance, Wu Ming was quite glad. He was glad that he came in person this time. Casey Parag. Wu Ming whispered softly, and a snow-white squirrel-like animal came out of the snow. It was Fufu. In fact, during this period, Fufu had been following Matthew, but Matthew couldn't find it most of the time. Just like this time, Fufu was hiding in the snow. By the way, Fufu was not as afraid of Wu Ming as before this time. Instead, It walked to Wu Ming and sat down. You want to save Matthew, right? Wu Ming said. Fufu didn't speak, nor did it shout. It just nodded gently. Then do it. You've been in Chaldea for so long, it's time to repay Matthew's kindness. Fufu was quite puzzled. Could it be that Wu Ming called it out just to say this? I originally wanted to adjust Matthew's body myself, but I accidentally found you. I don't like people who don't repay kindness, so I'm going to use your ability as a beast to adjust Matthew's body. It turned out that Fufu wanted to use the energy accumulated during the time in Chaldea. Fufu agreed. Wu Ming waved his hand and a golden teleportation gate opened up. A mass of golden essence flew out from it. The essence instantly fused into Fufu's body. In the next second, Fufu's body began to change. Fu's head, body, and limbs swelled up as if they had grown tumors. However, as if he didn't want to turn into a beast, Fufu forcibly suppressed it. The tumor-like swelling all came to Fufu's tail. In the end, Fufu's body did not change at all. Only his tail became incomparably huge, like a burning seven-colored flame, filling the sky. Fufu glanced at Wu Ming, then turned around abruptly and charged towards Chaldea. Watching Fufu enter Chaldea, Wu Ming did not move, because he was waiting for someone. However, Wu Ming knew that that person would not come for a while, so he chose to walk around and enjoy the snowy scenery. Wu Ming did not give the system to anyone in Chaldea. After all, other than the heroic spirits, only Olga Marie, who was about to master the third law, was powerful. Matthew, Gudazi, Roman, and the less than 20 Chaldea employees who survived did not have much combat power. Moreover, they did not need to become powerful, especially Gudazi, Matthew, and Roman. They did not desire to become powerful. They were satisfied with being ordinary people. Wu Ming walked while daydreaming. About half an hour later, a man in a white coat came from Chaldea. It was Roman Achaman. As soon as they met, Wu Ming asked about Matthew. How is Matthew? Is his body okay now? The reason why Roman came out late was naturally to check on Matthew's physical condition after being transformed by Fufu's power. Matthew's injuries are completely healed, and his cells are no longer dying. He can be said to be the same as a normal person, and his physical fitness is far better than that of an ordinary person. Roman's face was filled with joy from the bottom of his heart, and at the same time, he was relieved. After Roman asked Wu Ming to bypass Jisha, he gave the 10th ring of King Solomon to Wu Ming. As a price, Roman completely bid farewell to his identity as King Solomon. However, after that, Matthew's body began to deteriorate, which made Roman blame himself. If he still had the ring, he would have used all of King Solomon's power to save Matthew. After all, his identity had been exposed. The remaining less than 20 people in Chaldea knew Roman's true identity, so Roman did not need to hide it. However, Roman gave the 10th ring to Wu Ming. But now, the fourth beast, who had been hiding in Chaldea, had transformed Matthew's body at the cost of sacrificing his intelligence. Matthew would no longer be affected by the after-effects of human experimentation. Moreover, they had defeated the fourth beast in disguise. This was a good thing for all mankind. It seems that you really like being a human, Solomon, Wu Ming said, turning to look at the snow. Just call me Roman. Indeed, I like being an ordinary person. If it weren't for the sake of humanity, I wouldn't have become a doctor and entered Chaldea. Roman and Wu Ming stood side by side, looking into the distance. Congratulations, your wish has been completely fulfilled, Wu Ming said half-jokingly. After all, Roman had completely lost the ability of King Solomon, and he was already an ordinary person. If it's possible, I really want to quit my job in Chaldea and be a real ordinary person. I want to enjoy my life, work my life, be happy my life, and worry my life. But he could not. Chaldea was now waiting to be done. Even if it was purely for Matthew, Roman had to stay. In order to prevent human experimentation like Matthew from appearing in Chaldea again, Roman had to stay and supervise Chaldea. I'm going to let Jisha work for me. Wu Ming stated his intention. Work. Roman was stunned. It has destroyed many worlds. After those worlds have been reconstructed by me, I'm going to let it protect those worlds. I see. Even Roman found it slightly difficult to accept the topic of destroying and reconstructing worlds. Also, I'm going to let Jisha inherit your power and save those worlds that are about to perish for me first. Wu Ming was going to let Jisha implant the system to save the world. However, the system given to Jisha was dedicated to monitoring Jisha. There would be no reward, and there would be no rejection of missions. Everything was mandatory. This was the proverb, you can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Although Jisha was spared, punishment was inevitable. Let it go. I believe that it will be willing to do so now. After experiencing the threat of death, Roman thought that Jisha would reflect on it. After all, it was a tactic created by Roman. Roman did not think that Jisha would be pulled down. That's it then. I'll go first. After all, Wu Ming still had a lot of things to do. Don't you want to see the director? Roman suddenly said. Wu Ming stopped, turned around, and glanced at Roman. She has Parmelia with her. I don't need to. I'll come and see her when she has fully mastered the third method. Opening the golden ripple, Wu Ming did not stop and walked straight in. After the portal closed, Roman raised his arm. He had a communication device like Gudaz's on his arm. Director, he's gone. Chapter 1064. Wu Ming returned to the route, and Collis was waiting for Wu Ming on the central platform of the route. As long as Wu Ming left, Collis would replace Wu Ming as the temporary administrator. Master, I've confirmed all the people you've been paying special attention to. They've all been implanted with systems, so you don't have to worry about letting them meet for now. Wu Ming felt a bit awkward at Collis's honest words. Wu Ming coughed to hide his awkwardness. Ahem, let's begin the next part of the plan. The next part of the plan was Wu Ming's plan to become a god. He had to restrict the highly developed worlds and control them as a god, so that they wouldn't self-destruct because they wanted to explore higher levels of development. My contract, my dependence, I am the place where the tributaries converge. Bind with me, heed my call, obey my command, appear. As Wu Ming chanted the words of the spirit, nothing happened. Or rather, nothing happened to the root. Meanwhile, in each of the highly developed worlds, a silhouette appeared. It was a silent silhouette. Now, Wu Ming's essence and abilities had transcended from before, reaching an unprecedented and indescribable height. The price was that Wu Ming's eyes couldn't be changed back to their original color, and could only maintain their golden color and fiery red pupils. The 12 clones had completely broken free from the shackles of the spirit, and could activate their abilities with just a thought. Chanting the spirit was just a habit of Wu Ming's. Not only that, but all of Wu Ming's abilities had been strengthened like never before. The dependence of the 12 clones could create countless clones with strength comparable to the main body. Wu Ming wanted to use these clones to enter the highly developed worlds selected by the root to restrict these worlds and prevent them from dying. Wu Ming's original plan was to wait until all the worlds that were about to be destroyed were saved before activating it. However, in the end, Wu Ming still chose to work on both fronts. Restricting highly developed worlds from heading towards destruction, saving worlds that were about to be destroyed from destruction, stopping all functions of the root, and focusing all efforts on controlling time in all worlds. That way, the world would no longer be destroyed, and the world dust would not enter the root and become the root's black soil. Wu Ming's series of actions would no longer lead to the destruction of worlds. As long as he restricted the highly developed worlds and saved the worlds that were about to be destroyed, everything would return to the right track. The Great Origin would no longer accelerate its reincarnation due to its burdens, and the world would no longer be destroyed. The death of a world would only be a natural death because it had reached its end. In short, all that was left now was only a matter of time. After some calculations, Master only needs to send Mayu-sama to school for another 3 months, and everything will be realized. With Collis's words, Wu Ming was relieved. Everything is finally settled. Wu Ming lay down on the root's platform and rested. Thinking back to the time when the old man who took him in had passed away, when he obtained his own scale and headed to a mysterious world to begin this memorable journey, Wu Ming was filled with endless emotions. Wu Ming got to know quite a few people and came into contact with quite a few things along the way. But in the end, he still managed to return home and eliminate the trouble brought by the origin, black soil, as well as alter the origin, and prevent the destruction of a large number of worlds. This is much more interesting than before. The before Wuming was referring to the root dragon before this reincarnation. Back then, the root dragon was like a machine that constantly carried out its mission to protect the world. Although it had visited many worlds and seen many things, it was still rather boring. After Wuming received these memories from the root, he immediately used some means to extract them and seal them away. The reason could be summed up in one word: boring. Moreover, Wuming felt that it was enough to have the memories of when he was Wuming. If he received those memories, Wuming might not be himself anymore. Or rather, it was very likely that it would revert back to being the tireless, brainless, and machine-like origin dragon that only knew how to save the world. At that thought, Wuming felt that it was great that he could become Wuming from the root dragon. At that moment, Collis suddenly spoke, interrupting Wuming's thoughts. "Master, according to the memo, you have yet to resolve the issue of Ibirui, the Platinum Dragon King, and the Nameless Spellbook." At Collis's words, Wuming abruptly jumped up from the platform. "I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it." Wuming swiped his hand across the void, and a virtual screen appeared. This was the current world of the underground tomb. Ibirui was a vampire, after all, and Wuming was using the root to search for the earliest timeline of Ibirui's era. Wuming decided to resolve Ibirui's issue first. "So it's 200 years ago." Wuming found it. "Just adjust the timeline to 300 years ago. I'll go ahead and see what's going on." She had traveled through the timeline before Ibirui was born and then hid in the dark. Wuming could not find the reason for his distrust. However, Wuming's mind suddenly lit up. He paused for a moment as if he understood something. Could it be that I actually went to that era and came into contact with that dragon while hiding in the dark? As for what Ibirui said about Wuming being her benefactor, perhaps Wuming had gone to that world and accidentally exposed his past to Ibirui. It seemed that he had to find another way. "If that's the case, I won't go, right? I don't believe that it's because of me if I don't go." However, in the next second after Wuming said that, several figures somehow appeared on the platform of the route. Maeve, Tiamat, Athena, the young version of Guinevere, the young version of Guinevere, Lancelot, Pest, Letitia, and Shobi. These young girls of all shapes and sizes. At first, they did not know what to do. However, they quickly reacted. Because Wuming was here. However, while they reacted, Wuming did not. "Darling." Maeve jumped into Wuming's arms. Child. Tiamat hugged Wuming from behind. "Lord Villo." The young version of Guinevere and the young version of Guinevere hugged Wuming from both sides. Athena stood aside and watched the show. She stopped Lancelot, who wanted to help the monarch. Letitia comforted Pest, who did not get the chance. Shobi, on the other hand, was more easily satisfied. She only needed to see Wuming, the person who changed her and made her develop feelings for him, and that was enough. "Collis? What's going on?" Wuming was extremely flustered. "Master, they are all existences with systems implanted in them. After they completed a mission to save the world, the reward they chose was to meet you. Therefore, the root in charge of giving out rewards directly gave them the rewards they wanted. By the way, Master, Lady Ibirui and Lady Mayu have also come into contact with systems for some reason." Wuming could not help but look at Maeve. He felt that it was Maeve's doing. Maeve, on the other hand, chuckled and admitted it. "Also, your female guards in the Godslayer world have also been implanted with systems." Collis emphasized the word female. Wuming looked at the young version of Guinevere. The young version of Guinevere chuckled and admitted it. The young version of Guinevere is the reward that Artoria chose. Wuming's eyes started to lose focus. At that moment, Enkidu broke through space and walked out. "I'm sorry, Lord Wuming. I accidentally let Mother come into contact with systems." Now, looking at the large number of young girls surrounding Wuming, Enkidu could not continue. As the saying goes, raising a cow is the same as raising 2 cows. It seems that one more Tiamat would not be a problem. "Collis, let's go." With a whoosh, Wu Ming disappeared. He went to 300 years ago, the era before Ibiruai was born. Wu Ming now knew why he left his mark in that world hundreds of years ago. It was because it was unavoidable. What was worth celebrating was that the world crisis had basically been resolved, and Wu Ming's ultimate goal had been achieved. However, after Wu Ming returned from that world, he had to face how he provoked these young girls. They lived in peace. This was comparable to the destruction of the world. This might be the end of one thing, the beginning of another. End. Chapter 1065. In the Hakata world, because of Wu Ming's achievement in defeating absolute evil, No Name was given the title of regional ruler by White Yaksha. Coupled with the recapture of the flag, the community was able to develop rapidly, but No Name still didn't have a name. Because it was taken away by the Demon King, if they wanted to get back the title, they had to obtain the contract to obtain the name of No Name. But this was extremely difficult. If it wasn't for someone intentionally releasing Az Darkaha, who knew when they would be able to find the flag of No Name. And there were also the members of No Name that were taken away by the Demon King. They had to all be found, which wasn't an easy task. But if it was according to 16 Knights' words, that would be, "This is interesting, isn't it?" In the No Name conference room, Ren, who had just finished analyzing the current flaws of No Name, looked at the excited 16 Knights who stood up and sighed helplessly, but didn't say anything. What's interesting about it? 16 Knights San's brain is always wired differently from others. Black Rabbit couldn't help but complain. But Ju Yuao stood on 16 Knights' side. 16 Knights is right. This is more challenging for this lady. Haru Hiroyuki, who was holding the three-furred cat, also nodded. Interesting. What's interesting about it? Miss Hiroyuki and Miss Hiroyuki are obviously just playing around. Black Rabbit was so angry that his ears jumped. Don't say that, Black Rabbit. 16 Knights smiled wantonly and looked at Black Rabbit. Villo, that guy defeated absolute evil in the final trial by himself. How can this uncle be left behind? We're not delicate flowers that need to hide behind him. If this kind of thing is always left to the Villo, wouldn't we lose face? Ju Yuao added. So, we have to finish what even the Villo couldn't. Haru Hiroyuki's eyes became determined. Letitia, who was sitting on the side, couldn't help but smile. She could see that these three problem children did want to be in the limelight, but more importantly, they also wanted to take on the responsibility of the community and didn't want to let Wu Ming bear everything alone. However, they were still not strong enough. After all, the reason why Wu Ming didn't seek help from No Name when Az Darkaha was released was because they were too weak. When Wu Ming had faced Az Darkaha, who had the origin black soil, he didn't even dare to say that he had a 100% chance of winning, so how could he involve others? Otherwise, Wu Ming wouldn't have used himself as bait to entangle Az Darkaha and prevent him from wreaking havoc. Otherwise, with Az Darkaha's strength at that time, the lower levels of the box court would have been wiped out, and it would be hard to say if all the members of No Name would have survived. Then you'll have to hurry up and become stronger. Letitia smiled. At this moment, a light spot appeared above the conference room table. The light spot suddenly split into several parts and merged into everyone's body at a speed that no one could react to. 16 Knights closed her eyes and sensed the information from the light that entered her body. A few seconds later, she suddenly opened her eyes. I was still left behind by that guy. However, 16 Knights wasn't dispirited because of this. Instead, her smile was exceptionally bright. However, this is also a way to become stronger. Watch me use this Villo's thing to catch up to him. When the time comes, he'll cry. The thing that just entered the bodies of No Name was the system that Wu Ming created. And you can also become a savior. Ju Yuasuka's eyes were shining as if she was very interested in saving the world. There are also rewards that can be obtained. Haru Hiroyuki pointed out the main point. This was also the way to become stronger that 16 Knights had mentioned. And you can also choose a group reward. That's great, young Master Ren. This way, our community can develop even faster. How did Mr. Villo create such a powerful GIF? Black Rabbit's face was filled with joy. This reward is really Now even finding the former members of the community and our no-name's previous names will be more convenient. Mr. Villo has really helped us a lot. Ren's face also showed an uncontrollable smile. As expected of my master. Letitia seemed to be used to her master being able to do surprising things. However, Letitia noticed that Pest, who didn't have much right to speak and didn't speak much, was now frozen in place as if he was possessed. "What's wrong, Pest?" Letitia curiously walked to Pest's side. "Ah, I'm fine." Pest was shocked and immediately turned his back on Letitia. However, Pest didn't look like he was fine no matter how she looked at him. I'll go out first." Pest finished speaking and ran out without looking back. After that, Letitia found a few drops of tears on Pest's seat. Pest, who ran out, couldn't stop his tears from flowing. This was because in the system that Wooming gave her, there was a message from Wooming. "I've already investigated. The sun entering the Little Ice Age caused the Black Death to break out. It was actually to suppress a human's final trial. As long as your strength is enough, I will definitely help you solve the human's final trial. This way, White Yakshaw will have no reason to let the sun enter the Little Ice Age, and the history of the Black Death will also be changed. Moreover, this is the box court, so you don't have to worry about disappearing. Maybe at that time, I won't even have to do anything. You and your no-name companions can kill that human's final trial. So, whether it's summoning Wes and Latine or changing the birth of the Black Death, I want you to do it yourself. Through this gift that I'm giving you, work hard to become stronger, my little maid." Recalling these words, Pest's tears began to fall faster and faster, and so did his footsteps. Finally, after reaching his room, Pest couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears. "Wah!" Letitia, who was standing outside Pest's door with her back against the wall, smiled faintly and said the same words as before. "As expected of you, my master." The X-Moon world was located inside Chaldea, which was located on an iceberg in the center of the South Pole. Because of Wooming and Zelik, Chaldea managed to survive. The dozens of masters who were kept in the freezer also woke up and were sent to the hospital for treatment. Now, everyone knew that Chaldea wasn't to be trifled with. Only a few rascals dared to target Chaldea. However, even Olga Marie's Animusfire family would be able to take care of these rascals. After Olga Marie completely learned the third spell, Chaldea might become another great influence in the magician world. It also seemed to reflect Chaldea's beautiful future. During this time, the sky in Chaldea often cleared up, but this wasn't a bad thing. Gudazi and Matthew would come out for a walk from time to time. Although it was a little cold, this peace couldn't be exchanged. Today, the two were still walking outside. "By the way, Matthew, do you know that Chaldea is in the South Pole?" Gudazi suddenly asked. Matthew's little head couldn't help but tilt. "The South Pole? No, Senior, I'm not very sure. After all, I haven't been out much." After all, Matthew was the product of Chaldea's human experiments. Naturally, he didn't know. Is that so? Gudazi probably also thought of this, and felt a little lonely. "Today, I learned from the doctor that Chaldea is on an iceberg in the center of the South Pole. I thought it was on the Himalayas." After all, it was the highest mountain in the world. Normal people would generally think so. Even if they didn't think so, they wouldn't have thought that Chaldea was on the snow mountain in the South Pole. "I didn't think about this problem." Matthew looked up at the sky and said quietly, "Actually, I'm satisfied as long as I can see the blue sky." Looking at Matthew like this, Gudazi felt particularly distressed. At this time, Matthew suddenly coughed. "Cough cough, Matthew." Gudazi immediately supported Matthew, who almost fell. A trace of blood emerged from Matthew's palm that was covering his mouth. Matthew's body had reached its limit. As a test subject of the heroic spirit possession experiment, it was a miracle that Matthew could live until now, and accompanied Gudazi through 7 singularities. Even with the existence of Galahad's spiritual base, Matthew's body was full of holes. In other words, Matthew didn't have long to live. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,